Coach Jason Capson here. All right, let's talk about the bodybuilding drama that has been going on over the last week or so. There's been a lot of drama. There just has been a ton of drama. We're going to start first with the Jeff Nippard story. Those of you that have been following along know exactly what I'm talking about when it comes to Jeff Nippard and Mike Van Wyck, who Mike Van Wyck, a giant, monstrous man child, literally throat punched Jeff Nippard in the gym because of a video that Nippard posted in response to some comments by Mike Van Wyck. The video, in all honesty, was very basic. There was nothing derogatory in it. There was nothing defamatory. He didn't say anything negative specifically about Mike in the video. It was in response to Mike's video. Actually, Mike did the video first, talking about science guys, and maybe it was because Jeff Nippard is a small, quote unquote, small guy compared to Mike, and how we can't trust the science guys because they're all little, etc., etc. If you want to watch the video, watch yourself. It's actually pathetic. Jeff Nippard certainly did nothing by responding to this video, which last time I checked, you're allowed. Last time I checked, Greg Doucette makes a living, a very good living, responding to this kind of nonsense. It'll be interesting to see his take on all of this as the truth comes out. From what we see in the video footage, it's very obvious that Mike, again, a monstrous 300-pound, full grown adult man, walks up to Jeff in the gym. And this happened in Canada, in Ontario. And he walks up to Jeff in the gym and literally, unprovoked, throat slams Jeff Nippard, like literally nails him in the throat. And Jeff Nippard goes flying, literally flying to the floor, and ended up going to the hospital, getting a CT scan, etc. And as of today, it came out today earlier that he's actually pressing charges against Mike Van Wyck, and rightfully so. It was a disgusting display from Mike. Certainly, again, gives the entire bodybuilding world another. Trust me, the bodybuilding world doesn't need when it comes to negative publicity. I've been in the bodybuilding world for over 30 years now, and this kind of nonsense just, well, it's just that. It's nonsense. It's unnecessary. There's no need of it. If you can't handle someone going on social media and speaking their mind, giving their opinion. He wasn't even really speaking, he was just giving his opinion on the video that Mike posted. Jeff Nippard gave his opinion on the video, and Mike didn't like the opinion. And he saw him in the gym and walked up to him and basically he assaulted him, full blown assaulted Jeff Nippard. And again, you know, this whole tough guy attitude and this nonsense that permeates not the bodybuilding world, but the world in general. If we're getting butthurt over words, and if we're getting butthurt over people's comments or people's, basically feedback, then we should probably step away. Mike needs to step away from social media. He needs to step away from society. If this is how a grown ass man, a grown ass adult is going to react to a video from a guy like Jeff Nippard. It's absolute nonsense. It's ridiculous. And Mike, I hope he gets what's coming to him. I really do. I hope that they come down on him hard. He's been banned from the gym, rightfully so. The gym hasn't released as of today the full video. Jeff Nippard has told them release the video because I want the world to see basically that Jeff did nothing to provoke this. There's people coming to Mike's aid, but they're coming to basically stand up for Mike, and I think it's nonsense. Whether you're a friend of Mike's or not, you certainly, even as a friend, You certainly cannot stand behind this kind of action. You cannot, and nobody can say that what Mike did was justified. No, friend or not, you certainly can't justify this. You certainly can't say that this was okay because it's not okay. There's nothing about this that is okay. So, the very latest on the Jeff Nippard and Mike Van Wyck incident. Mike will end up going to court. We'll see what happens in court. This is an ongoing story. I'm not, I've been in the health and nutrition and bodybuilding space for a long, long time. I'm not necessarily a big fan of Jeff Nippard and some of the things that he promotes and some of the things that he talks about with regards to science-backed nutrition and health and bodybuilding, et cetera, et cetera. But he's certainly entitled to his opinion. He's certainly entitled to his opinion. He's certainly entitled to be able to walk around society and not having to worry about being assaulted by a giant man child who just happens to be having a mood. It's ridiculous. It's nonsense. It needs to be stopped. And I hope people learn from this that this kind of nonsense is not going to be tolerated. That if you have to go, first of all, if you can't act right in society, if you have to walk up to a guy and throat launch him, then you need to stay at home. Just stay at home. Just don't leave your house because you have no business being in a civilized society. That is the absolute bottom line truth to this high. And this is coming from a guy, by the way, who was in martial arts for 23 years, who was in MMA, who was I settled a lot of things over the years with fighting in an organized sport in MMA, under the right circumstances. I've never walked up to somebody in public and assaulted them because I didn't like what they said. That is absolutely ridiculous. And again, Mike's going to pay for it, and it's going to be interesting to see what the fallout is from all of this moving forward. Now, let's turn our attention to another story that has been, getting a lot of attention, and that is the Matt Jansen story. So, if you haven't been following the Matt Jansen story, a month ago or so, Nick Walker pulled out of the Mr. Olympia for the second year in a row, and basically all hell broke loose, and a lot of people were pointing the finger at Matt Jansen. Some bodybuilders came out. Quentin Beastwood came out and had some things to say about Matt Jansen. And then in one fell swoop, you had Nick Walker, you had Sean Clarita, you had Brett Wilkin, you had them all. They basically all just left Matt Jansen at basically the same time. Originally, the story was that, Nick wasn't looking right for the Olympia, and that's why he pulled out. I don't know if you watched the Greg Doucette video about that. Greg gets not a little, he gets very emotional about some things. And I think he basically went off on Nick Walker about being just lack of professionalism. He was, basically going down hard on him. That sounded strange, but he was going up on him. That sounded strange too. But anyways, go check out Greg Doucette, Coach Greg's. Go look at his video, and you'll see what I mean when I talk about this whole thing with regards to Nick Walker. He basically challenges Nick Walker in every way and says that he should have gone to the Olympia regardless of how he looked because he is a professional. He signed a contract. His fans wanted to see him. So regardless if he looked 10th place or first place, he should have showed up. I tend to agree with Greg on that point. I don't necessarily agree with how Greg, said it or how he presented it. That's up to Greg. Nick Walker is a grown man. He is a professional. Yes. I don't think that Matt Jansen talked Greg out or talked Nick out of competing in the Olympia. That was said. Even Nick Strength and Power had mentioned that he thinks that maybe Sean talked Nick out of it. I don't think anyone's talking Nick Walker out of anything. And Nick Walker's going to make up his own mind. If Nick Walker didn't want to do the Olympia, it's because Nick Walker didn't want to do the Olympia, not because Matt Jansen talked him out of it. I think that's utter nonsense. I don't think Matt Jansen has that kind of clout. I don't think he's talking Nick Walker out of it. I think Nick Walker looked in the mirror. I think that Matt Jansen's coaching wasn't I think the guidance he was giving Nick wasn't turning into the physique that Nick wanted to present on the Olympia stage, and I think Nick pulled the plug. And whether that was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do, it doesn't matter. It's what he did. I think it's unheard. I don't think it's ever happened ever that an athlete qualified for the Mr. Olympia 2 years in a row and didn't compete. Last year was different. I mean, he tore his hamstring. That's a completely different issue. He had to pull out. There's no doubt about that. But this year, he still could have competed. He still could have, I don't know. Again, Greg talking about his lack of cardio, lack, eating Snickers and Snickerdoodles, whatever. I don't think Nick was that far off. I think Nick could have showed up. I don't know that he would have looked good enough to finish in the top 10, maybe not. I've been very vocal about what I feel about Nick Walker. I think Nick Walker at his very best, in which we've never seen him at his very best. We've seen close, but even at his very 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 best, Nick Walker is never going to be Mr. Olympia, in my opinion. I don't think he has the structure. I don't think he has the build, the symmetry, the aesthetics. I don't think he should ever win Mr. Olympia unless he somehow changes his entire structure, which he's not going to do. I think now that we see Samson Dowda as the current Mr. Olympia and we see what that looks like, then if you even put Nick next to Hadi and you put Nick next to Derek, they are large, shorter athletes, but they also bring the aesthetics and the balance and the symmetry to a certain degree. I think Derek's really on the cusp of looking a little boxy, but Nick is well over that. Nick's, he's had a history. His distended stomach. He's got all kinds of issues with blockiness, the vein issue. He's got a lot of things that are just not worthy, in my opinion, of a Mr. Olympia title. So the fact that he pulled out is neither here nor there. As it turns out, I don't think it was all about Matt Jansen. I don't. I think part of this, and Matt Jansen did release a statement yesterday with the reasons why he decided to, step back from coaching at this point, or at least give an explanation as to what is happening. He's focusing more on his family, he's focusing on his kids and his wife. He's focusing on, his own. Uh, Athletic endeavors. He's doing distance training and whatever the case is. He's out of bodybuilding. He's no longer fired up as a coach. And I can tell you, as a coach, I've been a coach for many, many years, coaching elite bodybuilders. And I know that, what? Athletes leave coaches. Coaches leave athletes. It happens. It happens in the sport. It's not a big shock. Samson Dowda, like, look at what Samson did in this past year. And then his wife coaching him to go on and win Mr. Olympia. People change coaches. But I think the shock here was the fact that Matt had, four top level athletes that he was coaching that he's no longer coaching. There was a comment that Nick had made originally about Sean Clarita not quite showing up in the best shape under Matt Jansen this year. Sean Clarita, at 42 years of age, looked absolutely insane in the 212 Mr. Olympia and could have easily won. He got beat by a better bodybuilder. I don't think anybody is pointing a finger at Matt Jansen with regards to Sean Clarita's position this year in second place. He's the second best 212 on the planet under Matt Jansen. I don't think anything more needs to be said about that. Then if you look at Wilkin, went from classic to 212 to open bodybuilding, winning competitions under Matt Jansen, and looked really good in the process. And okay, did Quentin Beastwood, was he off under Matt Jansen? Yeah. Is he going off on Matt Jansen, and is it justified? Maybe to him it is, for sure. And again, as Nick mentioned, Quentin doesn't come across as a negative guy. He's not out there trashing people as a rule. I think he, obviously didn't get the coaching that he expected from Matt. There was obviously some issues there that, didn't come out. Matt didn't mention anything. Matt apologized to everyone for his lack of, I guess, full attention to his athletes, if that's what people thought. I'm certainly, again, having been a coach, I know that that's never the intention of a coach. A coach always, or usually, wants what's best for their athletes. So the Sean Clarita thing doesn't hold water. Sean Clarita looked the best he's ever looked. Now, was it enough to win the Mr. Olympia this year? No, because he got beat by a better bodybuilder. The end. Period. It happens. It has nothing to do with his coach. I think Sean Clarita looked his best that he's ever looked under Matt Jansen. I think Brett Wilkin had some really good showings under Matt Jansen. Now, if there's some animosity, if there's reasons for them to move on, so be it. It is what it is. If Matt wasn't as engaged recently because he's focusing on other things, cool, that happens too. But I don't think there was a mass exodus because Matt Jansen is a horrible coach. I think there was some issues, and Matt's moving on, and it looks like his athletes have moved on as well. It is what it is. Now, it'll be interesting to see the fallout from this and who ends up with who. Who ends up with Nick Walker? Who does Nick Walker choose as his coach? I think Nick Walker should call up Samson's wife and get her to coach him myself. That's probably not going to happen. But I do think it'll be interesting to see who Nick Walker ends up with as a coach. There's a few people that the rumor was, Hani. I don't think he's going to end up with Hani. I don't think Hani wants anything to do with Nick Walker. Hani's very selective, obviously, over with the athletes that he chooses. And, he's got an open slot, obviously, now that Chris Bumpsit has retired. But it'll be interesting to see what Hani ends up doing. It'll be interesting to see who Nick ends up with. It'll be interesting to see who Sean Clarita ends up with because he is at 42 years of age. I mean, let's be honest, he's at the tail end of his career, although I do think he looks better than he's ever looked. So I think he's still got 2 or 3 really good years in him. And I think he does have a chance and a really good chance of winning the 212 Mr. Olympia if he is on point, if he improves in certain areas. He always brings great conditioning. But I think if the current Mr. Olympia is off and he comes in on, I think Sean Clarita could win the 212 Olympia. I think that definitely makes sense. Matt Wilkin, we'll see who he ends up with, and we'll see who Quinton. I think Quinton does have another coach, if I'm not mistaken. But, anyways, lots of drama going on in the bodybuilding world these days. Let me know what you think about everything that's happening. There's always drama going on in the bodybuilding world. There's always athletes leaving coaches. It generally doesn't get this much publicity. But I do think that Matt Jansen took some hard hits that were probably not necessary. I think he took a lot of unnecessary heat. Again, the truth always comes out, so I guess time will tell. As of right now, Brett and Sean aren't really, they're not really trashing, Matt. The only person that really had some negative things to say was Quentin. And it is what it is. Here it's a sport where there are emotions and there's some big egos and there's a lot of things at play. And it's going to happen in the future too. You're going to see athletes leave coaches. You're going to see coaches leave athletes. But let me know what you think. Let me know where you think these athletes will end up. Who will be coaching? Who do you think should be coaching Nick Walker? And do you think Nick Walker will have the monumental comeback that he is predicting next year? Do you think he'll show up for the Mr. Olympia? Do you think, what show is he going to go to this year to qualify again? It'll be interesting. It's going to be an interesting year for in the bodybuilding world. But that's it. That's all. Coach Jason Capson signing out. Take care, guys.